Stunt performers and coordinators are some of the most overlooked elements of any film, and we're here to give them the credit they truly deserve. You can't just CGI your way to stunt heaven, and with the ones on this list, our goal is to make you see how close some of these performers came to making it to said heaven. We salute you, oh noble stunt folks, by highlighting some of the most gnarly stunts ever to make it to the silver screen. Like everything truly dramatic, it is best paired with a John Williams score. What is not to love about the first film to ever introduce Indiana Jones? Sure, this quintessential action-adventure movie opens with an incredible action set piece and never really taps the brakes, but by the time we get to the scene where Indy is being dragged behind a Nazi truck, we had to check if our hat had blown clear off. The entire sequence was shot by the team's second unit crew, with close-ups of Harrison Ford added later. The stuntman, Terry Leonard, who performed the stunt, thought it was an extremely dangerous, untested stunt at these speeds. The scene took over 3 days to film. The truck was built from scratch, with additional clearance added to the vehicle. The team also dug a trench to make sure Terry had enough room to climb underneath. However, at the end of the day, it was one term specifically that Terry had before he signed off on the stunt. The agreement that convinced him to do it? His best friend Glenn had to be the one driving the car. The superbly spectacular spy scenes seen in Skyfall certainly serve us some staggering stunts. And as the VO guy, I'm gonna have to talk to our writers about that level of alliteration. Regardless, we could do a whole video on Bond stunts alone, but in 007's 23rd outing, the opening scene that takes place on top of a train requires special mention. In the scene, Bond and Eve are after a man who stole a flash drive that contains the names of all the MI6 agents who are undercover, and who cares? He jumps on a train, man, and Jimmy, he's gotta go too. There's no green screen or sets, and the actors are actually performing on top of the train with a thin line on their ankles in the worst case scenario. The crane on the back is actively knocking off cars into the road, and the part where it rips the back of the train car off, yep, they actually had Daniel Craig drop into position where the back of the train was being pulled away to get the shot. If that wasn't all enough for you, Bond is then shot, and he falls off the train bridge, which is actually a stunt person falling limply backwards 300 feet into the water. Can you imagine that? It's like the worst backflop ever. Let's be real with each other for a minute. When you're James Cameron, they kinda let you get away with a lot. And that's why no one ever questioned James in the T2 commentary when he said, "See this helicopter going under a freeway overpass? That's a helicopter going under a freeway overpass." I've said it here on Screen Rant before, and I'll say it again. Terminator 2 Judgment Day is the gold standard of action films, and this stunt shows you why. While the digitally shape-shifting T-1000 was groundbreaking for effects at the time, Cameron actually leaned on practical set pieces to set the stakes for his storytelling. In the third act of Judgment Day, Arnie's T-800 is driving on the Long Beach freeway being pursued by T-1000 in a helicopter. T-1000 is flying and shooting with an extra set of arms, so the decision is made to drive under an overpass to at least get some distance from the helicopter. Well, stubborn old T-1000 decides to take it right underneath, which firmly put Cameron in the category of all-or-nothing directors. The original storyboard actually had this taking place with miniatures, but when it didn't look feasible, they thought, meh, let's just fly a heli under a road. Chuck Tamburo, a Vietnam vet, flew the helicopter and they put it on wheels to measure the clearance, which was less than 5 feet on either side. He did it at 70 miles per hour, because any slower and the downflowing air from the blades would have lifted him up to certainly crash. The camera crew refused to shoot it because of the danger involved, so Cameron just said, "I'll shoot it myself." Nice guy. Christopher Nolan has always been known for incredible visuals, but questions always arise about The Dark Knight Rises in regards to how much of the opening scene was real versus CG.
No one cared who I was till I put on the mask.
The sequence was filmed in Scotland where Bane and his thugs infiltrate a CIA plane as hostages steal a doctor before ditching the aircraft. It took 3 days to shoot the scene, and a mock CIA plane was built for much of the action inside the plane, tumbling the actors around to give the effect of weightlessness. Outside, however, is a different story, as a giant cargo plane lowers stuntmen to drop onto the CIA plane. From there, the plane tips, the wings fly off, and they blow the whole tail off. In the practice takes, the stuntmen parachuted to the ground, but in the final take, they were able to all be drawn up into the C-130 cargo jet, no problem. Except for maybe a flight suit filled with a little bat guano, I would assume. The finale of the film Police Story has Jackie as a police inspector taking on criminals in a shopping mall. The entire scene and movie is incredible, but at one point Jackie jumps, slides down a pole multiple stories, with glass lights exploding all around him the whole way down. Not only did Chan have to jump from a railing and catch the pole, but when the stunt was performed, the lights had heated the pole to scalding temperatures. Chan in a video discussed how there were no wires or safety nets to catch him, and it's natural instinct to let go of a burning pole. However, Jackie held on through the heat and slid the entire way, enduring second-degree burns on his hands. He almost lost his life, but still left that set to shoot scenes for Heart of Dragon the same night with the burnt hands. If Jackie Chan ever starts a Patreon, we should all go top tier. We had to put one more Bond film in, and while the modern context of 007 Man with the Golden Gun might feel dated, it's still one of our favorites. With Sheriff J.W. Pepper chirping non-stop in the car chase after Christopher Lee's Scaramanga, Bond pulls off one of the most daring car stunts ever put to film. The American stereotype of a sheriff asks Roger Moore,
You're not thinking that.
I sure am, boy.
And then he proceeds to drive over a rickety tie bridge, spinning 270 degrees in the process. If you ignore the cheesy slide whistle effect, you'll realize how crazy this is for a driver to do, and it actually featured the first use of computer modeling by an aeronautical lab to plan the exact calculations of the stunt. The driver nailed it in one take from multiple angles, which is good news because the same lab also had invented, and this is true, crash test dummies. While spies are very well represented on stunt lists in general, it also helps if your executive producer does his own stunts and is known for being, let's say, a little eccentric. Cue Tom Cruise, who's been desperately putting his life at risk for decades for our amusement. When building the stunt with director Christopher McQuarrie, Cruise thought that many people had seen other action heroes jump onto helicopters before, so they really needed to kind of up the ante. Cruise got himself a helicopter pilot's license and demanded to fly the scene himself with no green screen and without anyone else in the plane with him. In the stunt, Cruise climbs a long rope to the chopper with the camera rig and takes all the hairpin turns and aerials himself. Whoever their insurance broker is must sleep on piles of money changed with the sheets in the morning. Quentin Tarantino's Death Proof was a tribute to the vehicle stunt movies of the 70s, and to get that authentic feel, he made sure to cast Zoe Bell as one of the main characters, playing herself. In the film, Zoe decides to play a stunt game called Ship's Mast, where you ride the hood of your car, but is terrorized when stuntman Mike, played by Kurt Russell, shows up. For this stunt, production brought together the best in the business, including Terry Leonard, who we mentioned in the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Zoe stated, "There's no double, there's no CGI, it's all practical, and you're seeing that the person crying is the same one who's falling off the car. I think on some deep, subconscious level, it reads as real to the people watching." Yeah, I'd agree. At one point in time, Ben-Hur was the pinnacle of spectacle. It featured a 9-minute chariot race sequence that took a year's worth of planning and required construction of $1 million set. Dynamite was used for chariot explosions. Charlton Heston learned how to ride teams of horses, but the stunt team was brought in for most of the race. A stuntman was driving one of the chariots when one of them spun out of control. The stuntman flew through the air and was almost trampled by the horses on the track. This ended up and can be seen in the final film. The Hollywood rumor is that he died, but he actually only suffered some scrapes on the chin, luckily for him. For a film that came out in 1928, this actually really still holds up. Buster Keaton was a master of physical comedy and spared no expense when it came to getting outlandish laughs on film. Steamboat Bill Jr. features what may have been Buster Keaton's scariest stunt. In it, the front of a house is blown off and falls on top of Keaton, who just happens to be standing in the right spot. The set weighed over 400 pounds. The window had only inches of clearance, and Buster's mark was a nail in the ground. Whoa. That's pretty metal. The story goes that most of the crew left and even the cameraman looked away when filming. After looking up the stunts for this video, I really feel there should be an Academy Award category called Best Example of Insanity in a Motion Picture. Maybe Best Actor in a Tuck and Roll. How about Best Achievement in Original Explosions? Look, there's so many different stunts, how do you even classify or judge?